So now we're live.
Hello. Yep, I think that was my notice. Welcome to burnoutstudios.com.
Why didn't you just keep your settings? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, but it's been a long time. We haven't streamed in a long time. Sorry about that. I
Yeah.
I switched jobs and my schedule's been chaotic. So when you have what you're trying to do as a career, comes in conflict with what you actually do as a career. I would love to get paid for doing this.
Oh gosh.
I'm not sure what we're gonna talk about. There's been a lot going on in the news, in politics, but we try to stick to stories here. Last time we were on, I talked about the latest story that I was working on. It's not really a story; it's more of I guess I called it a self-help book. I mean, what's funny is I often argue with myself whether because a book like that is really my opinion of what goes through a average person's mind.
Refresh my memory about it again.
The path,
The path.
the steps. Basically, it's the
Oh,
the process a person goes through in their own mind to do something that's against their own moral code. So it's the path to evil, which is what I started out, but it's really what I consider evil is when you are able to convince yourself that you're doing that it's okay to do something that you normally would not do. Be that if it's a self-defense situation, and you have to shoot somebody, that kind of thing, or just convincing yourself that you have to lie, because it spares somebody's feelings or whatever. All of these things are normally against your own moral code, but we as humans, we have a way of justifying, which is that scary word to me. We justify our actions, and that's what the book is about. Is the path that a person follows in their own mind to justify something that they normally wouldn't do. And it'll probably be controversial because one of the chapters that is about the lies that we tell ourselves, and it kind of turned into a whole chapter about the transgender movement, because basically they're convincing themselves, they're living their own truth, but they've convinced themselves with that kind of language. It's my truth, that they are what they claim to be versus what biologically they are. And the thing that another chapter of the book is about what when you travel down that path and you justify your actions of doing something that's against your own moral code. Once you do that, it gets easier and easier, and pretty soon you find yourself on this path to doing things that are just way out of your moral code. Stealing, assaulting people, killing people. Once you travel down that path and nobody ever calls you out on your bullshit, it gets real easy to find your own truth, and to the rest of the world be damned. You do what the hell you want at that point.
yeah. It was like the. It's amazing how everybody harps on about bringing up history and stuff. stuff, you know. This isn't the same. It's not the same. But
right. And like
parallels.
old Tim Pool, he says, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes.
It rhymes, yeah. And so here's the rhyme: is that when the Allied troops made it into Germany and they got to the concentration camps, and they started, freeing the concentration camps, and they often went and got the townspeople, the people that, the infrastructure that was needed to maintain the camps,
mm-hmm.
and the non-soldiers all said, "We didn't know that was happening there." They're like, "Oh, bullshit! You knew that was happening. You knew what was happening there,
right?"
But to just, like you said, turn your mind off, or to justify.
Yeah, to justify in your own mind that
what was happening there wasn't your fault or wasn't your problem.
Right.
All that type of stuff is a major problem, major catastrophe problem.
Mm-hmm.
All those type of things. And you were talking earlier before we started about in that documentary, What a Woman Wants, everybody keeps saying, "Well, why does it bother you?
Right.
Why does it matter to you?
Why does it matter to you that I claim to be a woman?"
Because it never stops there.
Right.
And for the longest time, and the same thing, the same argument was that all these people for the last 10, 15, 20 years have been saying, it's a slippery slope. Once you start giving in a little bit here, before you know it, you're down the river,
right,
in the places you don't want to be, and everybody always, no.
mm-hmm.
Well, look what the slippery slope is giving us. You were okay with this. It's not going to be long before these people are saying that it's okay to love a kid.
Well, yeah. Well, I was just going to jump onto that was because I,
because they need a dating pool. That's what this is all about.
Right.
They need a dating
pool.
Well,
more than that, they want to make it normal, so they have to keep, spouting what they're preaching, what they're preaching, to make it normal. For instance, getting off the subject of transgenders, I unfortunately have a cousin who's in prison because he is a famous cult leader, polygamist. Anyway, his name is Terrell Dalton. Anybody that wants to can look him up and see all the wonderful things that he did. Anyway, I remember I was at a family reunion, and I remember the day that he announced that he was the Holy Ghost.
The Holy Ghost.
He was the reincarnation of the Holy Ghost. Yes, that's his claim.
That's the one he picked?
Why? I don't know why he picked that.
Right. Understanding the religion that he's talking about and everything, I'm just trying to figure out all the things you picked.
It was a. I can't call it an offshoot of the LDS Church. He grew up LDS, and but as soon as he announced that he had a vision and was told that he was the Holy Ghost, he was immediately kicked out of the church. But anyway, he was able to.
He went through a process.
Yes.
Just understand that, people. It's not just like,
right.
Oh, you're out. There's a whole thing, and then like a
court
thing. So he had to have stuck to that gun.
Mm-hmm. So he was able to put together a small following, and like all other LDS groups, he was into multiple wives, polygamy. And the thing is everything was, I can't say it was fine, in his mind, if you follow my book, he was constantly lying to himself, and justifying actions, and, having multiple wives was one thing, but then he, what always happens this way is, they start marrying younger and younger and younger girls.
Yeah, that is weird.
And he had a high priest guy, a friend or whatever, who was he was the leader of the church, figurehead, and this guy was the second in command, I guess you could say. And the second in command got, I guess, permission from the parents to marry this 14-year-old girl. And as part of the wedding ceremony, him and the Holy Ghost, my lovely cousin, took turns having sex with her on the night of the wedding. And
how does, as a parent, see,
that's just it. I mean, it's not only that, you're lying to yourself and justifying these actions. You're not only doing that, you are lying to other people who may or may not be your followers. They were. And justifying those actions to them, and they buy into it, and and it's the same thing. You just keep pounding the point home until people just buy into it and go along with it. And yeah, I mean,
what the funny thing that sticks out to me about that whole thing?
That's super normal now.
The reincarnation of the Holy Ghost.
Yeah.
When was the Holy Ghost ever incarnated? No, but seriously, right?
Yeah, but once again,
you have to be with sane people. I understand.
Would I want to?
Well, I'm just saying, there was never a time when the Holy Ghost was incarnate, was a manifested being other than the spirit form that it's always been in, right?
Well,
so, and it's never taken the form of a human before, so it's never. So as a logical thinking person, that should be the, excuse me, what does God need with a starship?
Right.
Right? That conversation in Star Trek, but part of the problem comes down to when
I just love watching your facial expressions when I tell you this stuff. I mean, I have no explanation for it. Would I, if I was given the opportunity, would I like to spend 4 hours just talking to Terrell? Yes. It would be so fucking fascinating.
My uncle was asked to head up an offshoot of the Reformed.
The RFLD.
RFLDS. Because we're distant cousins of Joseph Smith, So, because they always believed the papacy or the prophecy should have gone down through the family. And so they looked throughout and they found that we were related. So they asked him.
But to me, it has always been fascinating, and that's really what this book is. That's really what the book is about. Is I always wonder how people reach these conclusions in their own mind that justifies their action for what they do. And, that's basically what this book is about. It's the path that people travel down to get to this weird thing. Like, why, like I was telling you, I watched that Jeffrey Dahmer movie, or it's a mini series basically that's 10 episodes. I watched it because the actor is the kid that played Quicksilver in the Fox universe of X-Men. Anyway, he did a great job. He's creepy as hell. But what was really kind of neat about the show is all the people, because a lot of people, always ask the question, well, why didn't anybody notice something sooner? The same thing,
People always say that. How did you know your husband wasn't this monster? How did you know?
Right.
It's like,
well, the thing
that
is
means you have to admit that they're that. And why would you ever want to think of somebody is that?
That's the funny thing is because it goes through his whole childhood, and it also goes through everything, basically his entire history. And the thing is everybody asks, well, this was such a shock. He had 18 bodies in his apartment. Why didn't anybody ever say anything? And it's like, they said things constantly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the neighbor, which is kind of one of the focal points of the TV shows. She complained about smells, power tools, all kinds of noises, screaming coming from the apartment. And at one time, there was this one kid that he lobotomized that still managed to escape the apartment and ran out into the street naked, like buck naked. And these people found him on the corner, just kind of leaning up against a wall, drooling on himself. And they put a blanket on him and were trying to ask him questions. And of course, you can't ask a lobotomized person questions. And Dahmer comes around the corner after buying groceries or whatever, and there's cops there, and he convinces the police officers that that's his boyfriend. He's just really drunk. Let me take him back home. And they let him. And the whole time they let him up there, the neighbor lady is asking him, why don't you ask for that boy's ID? How do you know that kid's not underage? Dahmer had convinced him that he was 18 years old, and they lived together and they're boyfriends. And, it's just ridiculous. And his only form of proof was pictures that he took of the kid. And the cops bought it, and, yeah.
Lazy cops.
But, that's the, a lot of that TV show was just kind of a remark on society and how we as people, just ignore this stuff and don't worry about it.
That's true. Yeah, you don't want to deal with it.
Right.
People don't deal with stuff.
Because
but part of that's
if you're
also because you're not neighbors anymore. You just
right.
People live next to each other. You're not
right. But if you're in an apartment and you smell nasty smells and you hear people screaming while power tools are being used and you hear a thud. She called the cops every damn time. But after a while, after being told by the police 1,000 times, oh, it's nothing, ma'am. After a while, I think you would just stop calling.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you one thing that I would have that if I was her, I would have had a weapon. Because anytime, she would actually confront Dahmer and ask him what these smells are. And he said, oh, I had some beef that went bad. I had a freezer that the motor went out on and all this kind of stuff. And the guy had a vat of acid in his bedroom.
Unless you go in finger in it. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, it had a lid on it, but I mean, still.
Well, yeah, but I. Yeah.
And there was, it's funny because the first episode is where this he goes to the bar and he convinces this one gay black guy to come back to the apartment, and he's going to pay him $50 to take some pictures. He's an amateur photographer, and when the guy gets there, I mean, this place smells, and there's, it's a mess, and when he goes into the bedroom, there's blood stains on the mattress.
Oh gosh, really?
And it's like, and there's that big blue container in the corner that's an acid bath. It's like, I don't know why. Once again,
he was just like, okay, whatever.
Once again, I mean, it's people, they go through this process. They go down that path.
Well, there might be a difference.
They justify their actions
after watching something like that, and be like, "Hey, this is like that TV show."
No.
Oh shit! I gotta get out. Whereas back then, though, what I'm saying though is
the thing is I think
that stuff was kind of new back then. You know what I mean?
It's funny because even as a kid, I treated things a whole lot differently than like my sisters and brothers, because I remember we had moved from Oklahoma, middle of nowhere Oklahoma, to Denver, Colorado. So it was a kind of a big shock, going to a big city from living out in the middle of nowhere. And I remember this time, because in Denver we had to take a public bus to school. We walked a ways to get to the bus stop, and so when we'd walk to the bus stop, it was a good 3 blocks. And this at one time, this frickin' minivan pulls over and asks us, me and my sister, as we're walking, for directions. Mm-hmm. And Rachel, being stupid, walks straight up to the van and starts talking to the guy. Me, I backed up 4 feet the other way. Because there's no way I'm getting within grabbing distance of some idiot that I don't know. I just don't know what it is. I mean, was I always paranoid? No. But I mean, there's just some things that, just seem smart to do. Like,
had you seen it on a TV show?
No, I don't know what it is, mean? but I'm like, because I'm, I sometimes, I guess, it's the ability to read people. I can usually read people pretty quick, because I've met so many people in my life. But like, you can almost feel when, someone means you harm, even when they have that fake fucking smile on their face, because I remember, one of the, we had talked about, that whole gun saved my life type, thing that I wanted to do. That's about 3, podcasts back. It's titled "A Gun Saved My Life." But anyway, one of my stories of where a gun saved my life was, me and my buddy Brian were out shooting. We always went to the same place. At the time, we lived in Sacramento, California, in the worst part, of course. It was South Sacramento. But to go shooting, we would drive. There was this long road that was a raised bridge. They called it the Causeway, and it went to Davis, UC Davis. And you would drive from Sacramento across this long bridge with the causeway, and then on the other side we'd exit down, and you'd go underneath the causeway, and there was a bunch of abandoned cars and just junk everywhere. And we'd go out there and go shooting. Everybody did. And one time when we went down there, besides the raised bridge that the cars travel on, there's also a raised bridge that a train travels on. And the train track one, we parked underneath it, and it had like these X beams that would hold it up, or that would give it extra support. And we parked underneath the bridge, and by one of those X beams, so we couldn't go forward. We would have to back out to leave. And so we went shooting, and after we were done shooting, we knew that there was another car in the area and 2 other guys that were shooting. And as we were done shooting, we were pretty much out of bullets, which is the problem. We were leaving, and when we got to where our car was parked, these other guys had parked their car behind our car, so we couldn't back out. And so one guy, who was way over friendly, which was a big red flag, starts talking to us like we're bosom buddies. Hey man, you guys going shooting? What are you shooting? And he's looking at our guns, trying to figure out, if we have any ammo left. He's like, hey, can I see that? Hey, can I, touch that one? Can I do that? Blah blah blah. And we're like, no. Can you move your car? Hey, can I see that one? And he, I don't remember how he asked, but he asked Brian at one point, is that loaded? And Brian goes, bang, and kind of points the gun back in that guy's direction. And the guy's like, wow, cool. Can I shoot it? And Brian's like, no. Can you move your car now? And he just kept repeating over and over, can you move your car? Can you move your car? We're leaving. Can you get the hell out of the way? And it just kept on escalating. And, once again, in my mind, I'm looking for the safest place to be, because I didn't have a gun. The guns I had were empty.
You're empty.
They didn't know that, but the guns I had were empty. And so, I was by the truck, and so I'm like, well, this is, because the guy that's talking is right next to Brian, talking, like, blah, 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 blah. The other guy is behind the car door like a cop does. Hands down so you can't see what he's holding. And I'm like, great. So I need to somehow get in a safe position to where that guy who is armed, because the guy that's talking is not armed. Right. He's, blah, 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 blah. And so I was like, well, the safest place to be is right next to the loudmouth. And so that's what I did. I went around the car, went over to where that guy was standing and talking to Brian, and I stood right next to the guy. And he's all talking, and so now it's me and Brian both telling him to move the damn car. And finally, he gets the hint and they get in the car and they drive off. And as they drive off, they start shooting their guns out the window, kind of telling us, that we were going to jack you the whole damn time. But it's like, I have no doubt in my mind that those idiots wanted to disarm us and, I don't know, have their way with us or something.
Hopefully all they want to do is rob you. Right. Well, that's what I mean. Hopefully all they wanted to
do you never know.
Rob you of the guns.
You never know.
And they just weren't willing to risk getting shot to take them.
Right. And that's just it. I mean, these so-called nice people that you meet, sometimes they're the worst ones because they're just trying to catch more flies with honey,
Yeah, I was thinking about.
But I mean, I've always been that way. I don't call it being paranoid. I call it being cautious and being smart. Strategically placing yourself where you won't get hurt.
Yeah, I probably am too trusting. Probably probably not. Well, yeah. I guess maybe I'm too willing to give people benefit of the doubt. But, like, I'll think whether or not something could turn sideways, but in the back of my head, I'm just like, yeah, you're just being overly paranoid.
Mm.
You know, but
Yeah.
you know, back on the cult thingy for a second.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you know, you're like, well, how does somebody justify this stuff? How does somebody keep, like he said, you know, stick with the narrative and keep going down this rabbit hole farther and farther and farther until they're. You know, what's crazy though is that for every psychopath
Mm-hmm.
that's willing to do it, or that just, you know, I don't know how to say it, like, you know, is a Dexter or whatever, you know.
Mm-hmm.
There's also people like a brilliant mind
Right.
who actually have neurological conditions where they actually see
What's not there?
beings,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not giving any cult person a pass. What I am saying is there could be a cult person that literally sees a being who they think is angelic or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and they can have a full-on conversation with them, and it's not the type of conversation that one would say, well, that's the kind of conversation I'd have with myself.
Right.
You know, in that movie, what was fascinating is he would, you know, he would shake your hand.
Mm-hmm.
He finally got to the point where he had to realize what was real and what wasn't, and the best way to figure out what was real and not was if he talked to you, he shook your hand.
Right.
Because that was a corporeal person.
Right.
And then he even had to, for a while, you know, it's like, is there somebody standing there? You know what I mean? And then they're like, no, or yes, or no, you know what I mean? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
There's so much stuff you have to fight against out there. And then to segue that into the cult of politics, this cult that's happening right now of you'll own nothing and be happy, that you don't need to protect yourself because we'll protect you, that these psychopaths don't go away with that. All that happens is they get easier to get away with what they want. It takes longer for you to get protected.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the line in Star Wars? Hate begins.
Oh yeah.
What is
Well, that's one of the things that my book is based on.
Pain leads to suffering.
No, fear leads to hate. Hate leads to anger. Anger leads to suffering. Blah blah blah. But in my book, that's one of the things that it starts with fear. Fear, it seems to be the thing that sends everybody down the path, and they hate, you know, usually what they fear, and they just talk themselves into doing what was against their moral code. I mean, it can be as simple as a little.
You hate that you fear transgenderism.
No, like
You know what I mean?
like you know, for instance, you know, a simple one. You know, your daughter or your son lies to you for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
and the reason that they lied is simple. They were afraid that they were going to get in trouble, and they hate the idea of getting in trouble, so they're angry about it, so they decide that the best thing to do is lie to you, so they justify that in their mind, and then they lie to you. That's the path. And so, I mean, it can be as simple as that, you know. I actually use that in my book as one of the, you know, because, you know, I remember the first time Evie lied to me. And, you know, I mean, that's just kids do that, but
Right.
I mean,
It's just, yeah, I just, so I haven't been watching as much like Timcast and
yeah,
all that stuff lately. I just, they talk about the human brain is remarkable. The fact that you can just kind of turn off all the things that can kill you and just go about your day. Because if you really thought about, especially go back to like caveman days, you think about all the things that probably could kill you in the day, and all you did was worry about that stuff. You'd never leave the house to go find food.
I don't.
There's a
I don't know.
tiger.
I don't know if that would be a smart idea, because that can kill you.
Well, I know, but the idea of having a rumble in your tummy for a little while, compared, there's a tiger around that bush, there's a snake in that tree, there's a spider in that cave. There's just so many things.
Yeah.
That they say that your brain gets overwhelmed and you just shut down. So your brain has this amazing ability to say, well, we just won't think about that, and we can go
Right.
about our day and
Right, because all those things that can kill, or that could kill you back then, still exist.
right, no, and we do that today.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean. We and it's amazing how your brain can just, because, oh my gosh, am I just.
Yeah, because
nuclear war.
Here's-
I was talking to my wife. It's like I said, straight up. I looked at her. I'll look at you straight up and ask you, what you about to do? Vaporize or try to live after the fallout where everybody trying to eat you and try to get food?
try to live afterwards.
I think I might just want to get vaporized. Just put me ground zero and let me just
Nah.
just
No,
I don't know.
because
Struggle afterward just seems crazy.
one of my favorite lines in the movie is from. See, we stick to stories here. One of my favorite lines in the movie is from Full Metal Jacket. I mean, there's a lot of great lines in that movie. I can quote it for hours, but there's a scene where there's this mass grave and they're covering the bodies with lime, and I can't remember his name. The kid that's the main character, he narrates the show also, and he's like, the bodies had been covered with lime. The only thing the dead know is it's better to be alive. It's a great line.
I read that book, The Road.
That's a depressing book.
And that does not seem exciting.
Yeah. But that's just it. I mean, I guess, one of the ways I look at survival type stuff is, because I love that stuff, is if you look at it like a game where you keep, conquering these different tasks, and, you can overcome all this stuff and survive,
What's funny is have you watched any of those like the shows where the guy gets dropped out in the middle of nowhere for a week?
Yeah.
And then practically starves the whole week because
Right.
the idea of actually trying to find food is
Yeah.
not very easy.
Yeah, there was this one. It was a very short-lived show, and it was these 6 friends that. The show would start out where one friend would just be going about his regular day, and the other 5 friends.
One of them just come and.
Yeah, they would snatch him up, strip him practically naked, and throw him out into the wilderness somewhere.
Yeah, that was a good show. Yeah, and then they just drop you with like 2 things.
Yes.
You happen to have this on you and this on you.
Right.
There you go. Have fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, those shows were, but I think sometimes people think it's a lot easier. Oh, I'll just go out there. There's food there. There's this, that, this.
Well, there was one episode where one guy, he got like super lucky at the very beginning. He was dropped out somewhere, and he was able to kill an animal right away.
Yeah, he killed a pig. He did it all Rambo style, like that too.
Right.
With the stick with the knife on
It's
it,
like,
you know, and
it's like
came
so
down over the top of it.
he's out there just camping and living it up, and it's like, you know.
But once again, though, I think he said it in that episode. He knew how fortunate he was.
Oh yeah.
That he got something like that
Right away.
And then the other thing about that is he understood that was only going to last for so long that if it had to be, he was going to be there longer. It was going to be, you know, yeah, it's good for right now. It's just,
Yep.
yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's just,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. We got 2008 crash coming. They say it's going to be worse.
It's going to be worse. Because
they're talking about hyperinflation.
I agree with Crowder. Well, he's not the only one that says it. I think Beck even said it was what's coming is not a crash. It's what's coming is a depression.
Yeah, and not just a depression. It's what they can call, and it's something that Jones.
But what I don't understand
Jones has been talking about for 15 years was going to come.
Right.
He kept on talking about it for.
Right.
It was supposed to happen 10 years ago. But he's talking about hyperinflation, which we're in inflation now. But he was talking about $10 for a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
Things like that.
That's well, yeah, and what I don't understand is you know, we keep on hurting the beginning of the supply line. You know, it's like okay, you know, farmers, ranchers, just kill all your cattle and burn all your crops. It's like, wait, time out, what?
They keep telling, we're going to have food shortage, but you farmers don't farm.
Right.
So, you know, 10 years ago, me and Marty had conversations, and I'd been listening to Alex Jones and stuff like that, and, you know, I would say they.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd always be like, well, who's they?
Mm-hmm.
Who is they? And it's like, well, I don't know exactly who they are, but there's got to be, you know, and it's amazing how nowadays, to be able to say they.
You know who they are?
Well, not just you know who they are, but it's just, oh, yeah, sure. You know, like, there was a time when I'd have a conversation with people, and they'd look at me like, who are these mysterious they people?
Right.
Who nobody's trying to do this. Nobody's trying to do that. You know,
right.
It's just like,
well, it's just like way back when you know, they would continually pass gun legislation that would restrict your rights more and more. And then when you would go and talk to a politician and ask them, you know, why are you guys trying to take away my guns? They'd go, nobody's trying to take your guns.
Right.
It's like, really? Well, why'd you pass those 5 laws?
Well, yeah, but it's fascinating to me now that all these mainstream shows like Glenn Beck, like Crowder, like Rubin, they will throw out that word they, and they'll throw out words like the elites and stuff like that, and people are like, oh yeah, I know exactly that, yeah. When they still don't know exactly who they actually mean.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of the things I appreciate about what's his name, Prager, Dennis. He always says the left, and then he always codifies that by saying, I don't mean liberals, because liberals have common sense. The left, they've gone way into authoritarian grounds, you know. And I think his little short explanation is better than they.
Yeah, but if you want to blame conservatives for far right nationalism, although I still don't understand exactly if the Nazis could be considered far right because
No,
they were socialists.
They were the socialists.
But that's what they always say. They say the far right always ends up in Nazism. The far left winds up in authoritarian. But I don't know about that. But I just don't give them that much. It's not your fault.
Right.
Because our conversation started off with liberals saying things like, "Does it really hurt you?"
Right.
It doesn't hurt you, because that's what is being liberal, right?
Right.
It doesn't hurt you.
Because this is the thing that
But it's gonna hurt your kids. We're gonna be happy about that.
One of the things that's funny is things are provided for us as far as names and terminology. Like, we all now talk about the LGBTQIA plus, I believe that I got that right, community. And they lump all that stuff together like that's one community. It's like, no. The L's and the G's usually don't like the T's, and the L's and the G's don't like the B's that much either. And, they lump them all together because it's easier to push agendas through if you lump it all together. So it's like the T's are riding the coattails of the L's and the G's because, it's just more expedient that way.
Well, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right.
That's the story that I would been writing, that rat's nest idea, is that in it, if you have a right and a left parallel to what's going on today, the left wins the battle, crushes the right, in fact exterminates the right to the point of maybe a few thousand left after, and that's exterminating billions and billions, because this is on a Star Wars size.
Right. Which, if you think about it, that is the smart thing to do for the left, because the left doesn't want to have kids because it's going to destroy the environment and blah, blah, blah. And they think the world is overpopulated anyway, so they might as well wipe out, half of humanity, and it might as well be the right.
It's not so much that. It's that all of that thinking challenges their existence.
Right.
So you just eradicate it.
Right.
And you get to the point, just like with the Nazis, in their thinking.
Well, that was one of the things that I liked about that.
You need to eradicate. It's justified because they're not human anymore. They're not. But
that movie Equilibrium, they got rid of thought because with a pill.
With a pill, and then anybody who did think they killed.
Right.
But my story takes place like 5 years later.
Mm-hmm.
It's only like 5 years later, after the war has ended. Now, the left is all consuming itself. Mm-hmm. They've all fractioned the L's are over here, the T's are over here, the T's are over there, this is over there. But there is a central authoritarian section of it, and they're gobbling up everybody. Really is what's happening,
right?
In it, but yeah, they're going to start to fraction off and have their own wars and
oh yeah, because
it's all about you come down to the control thing. And
well, no, I'm convinced that the left, at their core, they hate people.
They do, yeah. Well, and what's fascinating is everybody always, especially the left. We're not religious. We're not
Right.
We're not this. We're not that.
We're part of a cult, but you're not supposed to talk about that.
Well, no, but I mean, everything that the left does has been generally something to push back against the Christian right.
Yes. The
We want
patriarchy.
We want free sex. We want drugs. We want whatever, right? All these things have been things that our society reflects the oppression of the religious right on those vice freedoms.
Right.
And
but if you analyze it even more, what they're really attacking more than anything else is traditional family. They don't want anybody to reproduce any longer.
well, but see, that's my thing. What I'm saying though, what I was getting at was all these things have been against religion, and how religion's this made up thing that controls everybody and all this stuff. But what's fascinating at the core of the religion is a fight between the ultimate good and the ultimate evil, and the ultimate evil that told the ultimate good that I will do everything in my power to destroy your children.
Mm-hmm.
And what are we saying is the ultimate thing that is fought against? Everything we've been talking about is about destroying children, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating how we got it. You know, religion's so it's all made up, blah blah blah. But everything that it seems like that's happening seems like it's coming out of this religious struggle, this battle, this good and evil battle that's been happening since man can remember a memory, a thought, but it's all made up. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just getting to be a little too coincidental.
Yeah. Well, it is, you know.
Because how else do you start the because where, like what you're talking about, where does somebody get that original thought to, you know, oh, well, humans are horrible, let's get rid of half of them.
Right, the whole parasite thing. Mm-hmm.
I mean, all of that type of stuff, you know, and then to think of what you're justifying to put children through.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there was abuse in their houses when they grew up, and then they allow the abuse for the child that they're now raising. I don't know if it's, you know, because they talk about if you were abused, you know,
do you just think it's normal?
Right, you know, you got smacked around,
so therefore you smack around.
So therefore you smack around.
Mm-hmm.
That type of stuff, you know. I don't, because we're seeing things on a whole nother. I don't understand how the idea of taking an 11-year-old girl to a strip club and that's
normal.
No, that's immoral. But it's okay to take a transgender kid that you believe is transgender to a strip club and let them strip, and that's moral because it's somehow theater.
Right.
Is that where they're sketching the line because they think that it's just theater, that the drag show is just theatrical, so it's not actually harming anything because it's just make believe, it's just fun. But you can't twerk in front of an 11-year-old kid and then say that that's not. Damn it! I don't understand.
Well, no.
And I don't understand how they
to me, the
How
act,
a parent takes their kid to that.
to me, the act of that guy twerking in front of an 11-year-old, that may or may not be damaging to the kid. But what's damaging to the kid is the parents telling them that this is normal.
Well, I don't know if it's. I think it is damaging. I story time. I bring up this little movie called Being Human.
God, I don't
No,
think
not Being Human. What Things May Come. What's Robin Williams?
Yeah,
movie?
the What Dreams
What Dreams May Come.
Yeah, the one where he goes to hell, right?
Yeah. Well, he goes down in the
Hell
to
to
get his
right.
wife.
Yeah, that's part of a trilogy, by the way.
But that's not the stuff that really spoke out to me in that movie. The things that spoke out to me in that movie was that his kids died in a car accident.
Mm-hmm.
So they're already gone. But when he dies, a blurry being appears to him first and talks to him as a transition, so he's not startled.
Mm-hmm.
But as the being becomes clear and corporeal, it's his mentor, and the person that got him through, his mentor for medical school and everything, and how touched he was that his mentor was the one who met him on the other side.
Right.
And then later he meets this really pretty girl who is Hawaiian. She's Polynesian, I think. Asian, Polynesian. And she's in a Polynesian outfit. And they're having this conversation about life as they're looking out over the spirit world, I guess, and the beauty of everything. But as things become clearer and clearer, he starts to realize that he knows those two people on a more of a personal level than he should know them at. And he realizes that the mentor was actually his son.
Right.
The girl was actually his daughter as they were coming to meet him. And he asked the daughter, "Why would you come to me
as a Polynesian?"
As this Polynesian woman. And she said that her dad used to go on lots of business trips. And he would always talk with the stewardesses on the planes. And he would bring me back the little umbrellas from his cocktails. And how does something so quote-unquote innocent in his brain tell his daughter that that's what she thought would get him to love her, was to be like those stewardesses?
Right.
That's the attention that she thought she needed to give out to get his attention back, or his love, you know what I mean?
Right.
So does sending an 11-year-old to these things to have these men twerking in them,
right,
doesn't that just reinforce that in order for him to get acceptance and love,
he has to do the same thing?
So that he has to do the same thing?
Absolutely.
How do you live yourself as a parent doing that?
Right.
I don't get that. I don't understand. I mean, I understand fighting through all the stuff, the anger, the this, the not being mean, and that's a daily struggle, and trying to figure out where that comes from and things like that. To add on that, and to psychologically do that to a child, that is a child abuse.
Oh yeah.
And even with the son, think about that one. the son thought that he couldn't just show up as himself, but he needed to come as the person that he most respected, that he would rather see him than his son. You know, it's, that says when we put our work over our family and things like this. And, it's just fascinating, and I think I can go back to this whole struggle of good and evil, this ancient drama that is being unfolded throughout time. Is you know, when Joe Rogan dismissed the Bible and Jordan Peterson told him, you can't just dismiss it.
Right.
You just can't just throw it away like it's nothing, because for some reason that book has been around our entire history that we know of. And then before that, something in there, there's some basic human truths in there that
well,
if we lose,
right.
we lose at our own peril.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, this podcast is about stories. It's supposed to be about stories, you know, and unfortunately, that also means the stories of life. But the thing is
well, that's what stories are. Stories
right,
of life.
Right. But the thing is if the Bible, I mean, in my mind, since I was never really a religious person, I like to study religion, but I've never considered myself a religious person. If the Bible is just a series of stories, which that's truly what it is, you know, to me, stories, part of reading stories and watching movies and all these, and even listening to stories from other people, is there's always a message in there, you know, and all the good stories have some moral struggle that people are going through. And if we don't learn from these stories, yeah, it would be one of the biggest losses ever, you know, to lose those stories from the Bible.
Well, but I think what I'm saying though is that there's a story in there that we dismiss as the relationship part of it.
Right.
This idea of this ultimate evil and this ultimate good, who supposedly care about our quote unquote soul.
Right.
And to just, yeah, I think to lose that underlying narrative in it, and that's the one that everybody easily wants to dismiss.
Right.
You know, oh, they're just stories. Well, they're supposedly they're stories to drive home about this struggle.
Right.
But
I mean, you know, Grimm fairy tales, those are stories, and it's the same type of thing.
yeah,
There is a message and a lesson that they're trying to teach. The stories that we're writing, A Town Called Liberty, those are message stories that we're trying to teach.
right.
We are predicting the future, and the really retarded thing right now is I'm writing these stories, and I'm thinking, you know, years down the road, this is how it's going to be. And it's really not that long. It's really not as far as I think it is. It's like 5 years down the road is what it actually is. And that's scary to me. But anyway, I hope it's not 5 years down the road. Because, you know, even though on the outside, just like in Demolition Man, when you see A Town Called Liberty, Visually, it's very appealing. It's a beautiful city. All the people in it are healthy and they seem happy. But when you dig down, that place is the most horrible place to live on the, I mean, it's just, you know, when you take away freedom, you know, it's just like Pyongyang, North Korea. Visually, from a distance, when you're looking at it, it's like, wow, that's a thriving metropolis. And then you get down onto the level and you see the fake fruit on the shelves and you realize, oh, okay.
Well, what was fascinating, except for the people that were underground in
Demolition Man?
Everybody seemed to be going along just fine.
Yeah, they were all
before
blissfully
Stallone showed up.
Blissfully ignorant.
Right? Well, yeah, blissfully ignorant. And there's something to be said about blissfully ignorant.
It is. Yes. It's the same as in The Matrix when he eats that steak when he's talking to, what was the, Smith. Yeah. He's like, I know this steak doesn't exist. When I put it in my mouth, I know the Matrix is telling me that it's going to be juicy and delicious. And after all these years, you know what I've determined? And he eats it and he's like, ignorance is bliss. I don't want to remember nothing.
Well,
nothing.
Yeah, in his defense though, he's talking about I can go to sleep in the Matrix and eat this every day.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can go back and have their
slop.
Yeah.
Tasty wheat.
Tasty wheat.
And then the whole argument, maybe they couldn't figure out what chicken tastes like. That's why chicken tastes like everything. But yeah.
Well, just as we're thinking about that, I was just trying to think. What they didn't show was what made Zion so special. Because what made living it real, what was so bad about the Matrix compared to being out of it? That's, you know what I mean? I mean, because like most movies like Demolition Man, where you say, well, you weren't really free to do what you wanted, or like Equilibrium, you weren't allowed to feel, or there's all these different little caveat things. I'm trying to think of right now in my mind, because the Matrix was life as we know it right now. Yet waking up and going to Zion, they didn't say anything about like touch was 10 times
better,
was 100 times better, or this was better.
It couldn't be though, because as it was explained, is when he touches that chair when they first go into the void, and it's a loading program, as he explained it. He's like, he touches that chair and he's like, this isn't real. He's like, what is real? It's your mind sending electrical impulses to different parts of your brain, and that's what says that you're touching something real.
Right. So then what's the justification of waking up everybody out of the Matrix?
I personally think that that would have been an interesting way to do the Matrix, was show it from the point of view of the guy that, because he told the story of a guy who woke up from the Matrix, and he was able to, when he was in the Matrix, he was able to shape things and do things, and he woke up from the Matrix, and he said he was the one that set the first of us free.
I'm assuming that's supposed to be Christ.
And so what I'm thinking is, what it would be. There's a movie with the girl on fire. The what the hell was that?
Mockingbird.
Yeah, the Mockingbird and stuff. What's her name? Jennifer
Jennifer Lawrence.
Lawrence. And Chris Pratt did a movie together
Oh yeah.
where they were on a
Passenger.
where they were on this passenger thing that was going to another planet, and everybody was asleep, and his pod screws up, and he wakes up, and he realizes that he's going to die before he gets to where they're going. And just like in the Matrix, that first guy that woke up is completely alone. And he has to ask himself if it's morally right to wake somebody else up. And so what he did, most likely, is he tried to wake up everybody.
That makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, because they never, except for the abuse of the body, but yet most machines. I guess they said we know there was a war. So I guess the war. So then they were captured. So they're they're being slaves. So I guess to free themselves from their captors. I guess that was the reason for waking people up.
Yeah, I mean the other things that Morpheus said to him is that one of the things that I guess was kind of morally repugnant was the machines would liquefy the dead and feed it to the living.
Right. The question also comes down to: could they wake everybody up out of the Matrix? I don't think they would have the resources.
Right.
So then...
Because, that was another one of those deep conversations that most people just glossed over was when he was talking, when the mayor or whatever was talking to Neo, and he was saying, do you see those machines down there? They scrub the atmosphere in here and give us breathable oxygen. I have no idea how they work. I just know that we need them to survive. And that was, this big moral message that the machines needed us and we needed the machines. So, yeah.
Right, so morally, they wouldn't be able to just unlock everybody. Well, they wouldn't be able to feed everybody.
Right.
So then they have to keep so many in the pods. And then you would almost have to consign everybody in the pods to stay in the pods as this new batch of humanity starts to build. But they're going to spread because that's what we do. Yeah, there's a lot more to that story than...
Yeah, it makes me want to, because I've never read them, because I don't even know if they... I'm guessing they've been translated into English, but I'm not positive. But it was a Japanese graphic novel first.
Was it?
Yeah, The Matrix was a graphic novel. And that scene where Neo dodges the bullets, that's in the comic book.
Oh. I thought it was just adapted. I thought they were just fans of Ghost in the Shell, Akira, and things like that.
Nope.
Huh.
I mean, the Wachowskis were the people smart enough to, translate it from...
Trans, that's interesting.
Wow. Kind of an inside baseball joke. But yeah.
Yeah, that would be fun to Because that would just be totally demoralizing. As demoralizing as the whole thing when Neo meets the conductor, or whatever his name was, I can't
When he goes to the source?
Yeah, the source. Yeah, when he meets the source,
Right.
whatever, and they're having that conversation, he starts flashing up how many Neos there have been throughout history.
Right.
You know, and he starts realizing that they've gone through this over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
But to actually have that conversation of getting there and being like, okay, I'm gonna wake up everybody, and then to have him say, oh, well, sure. You're just gonna kill them all. You're gonna kill 95% of them.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean? They'll starve within the week. Huh? Yeah. How are you gonna feed them? I mean, you talk about just like self-defeating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Maybe that was one of the conversations they had.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much stuff that's happening right now. It just. I was talking with the wife too about this hyperinflation problem and this. I was like,
Yeah. Have you bought groceries lately?
I'd imagine it might turn into England in the 70s and 80s.
Well, the thing that scares me is, history doesn't repeat, it rhymes.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going into a depression. And how did we get out of the first depression?
War.
And right now we're going into a second Cold War, basically, with Russia, which could easily turn into a real war.
Well, it almost sounds like these idiots, these powers to be, are thinking, well, we can just stave off the depression
With war.
by just jumping to the war.
Mm-hmm.
And I have always kicked around this idea with you, like a long time ago, about China. Is that the one thing I always thought about that we had saving grace from China was the fact that they've never been a conquering nation.
Right.
And they don't have. They have a history of unification. That they unified their country with war, but they don't have an expansionist history of really. I mean, there's, I guess, I don't know, it's Taiwan and the Philippines and all that expansionist.
Mm.
Maybe they had a colonial side to them. Maybe.
I don't know.
Going down through the South Pacific there, but.
It's funny being a
But
hit.
what they do have a problem with is overcrowding.
Mm.
And I've always said that there's an idea that it could be like, well, where are we going to put everybody? And they can say, join the army, and when the war is over, you can have a house. Not just 10 people living in these tiny apartments like they had in Hong Kong, but one family could have, we'll just give you a house like in California, or a house,
Mm.
I've always said west of the Rockies would be China, and there's a lot of houses that they can just give somebody, and that, a basic house here is a big place compared to a lot of those places in Asia.
Right.
Some of these documentaries, I have dirt floors.
Mm-hmm.
Not that all of China has dirt floors. I'm just saying out in the rural areas,
Right.
where they have a lot of poverty, is like that. And you can just transplant people here, and there's already infrastructure built. Grocery stores are already built. Hospitals are already built.
Yeah.
But
I don't. The thing is, you know, do I think that China will do something stupid and try to take Taiwan? Maybe. But as far as them getting involved in any type of war where they have to, fight against us, or they don't need to. They're slowly taking over everything anyway, so.
See, that's the thing, though. They talk about them
I mean,
trying to rule the world by owning everything.
Yeah, they've taken over most of Africa, and
but see, that's different than a conquering people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Conquering means we're gonna come in and now everybody's gonna speak Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's gonna abide by our rules. This is different. This is just, hey, just let us. This is just business people owning everything.
Well, yeah,
it's a lot different.
But the thing is they've. I said the word they. They've.
Well, that's because there's times when they work.
They find that it's easier to come in and fit in to a certain society, and then slowly over time change it to a socialist communist society. Because you can't look at California right now and not tell me that place is 100% socialist.
Oh, California's gone so bad.
Yep. And yeah.
Well, that's yeah, but yeah.
It's just the way it is, and I can't remember. I believe it was Reagan that gave that speech, where he talked about, if I was going to change the world type thing, and he basically gave a blueprint of the steps you would have to take to make or turn a country socialist, and we've done every one of them. And people welcome it with open arms.
Or whatever that, not the Salsland. What's that Russian spy that they turned that everybody always tells Tim to watch?
Right.
And yeah, we've done everything that's on that guy's list to.
Mm-hmm.
And how did we do it? Under the guise of, well, what does it matter to you? All we're doing, and usually it all comes through social justice.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta give us this money so that we can help out these people. You gotta let us raise taxes to this point so we can help out and do this. Don't you want to be nice? Don't you want to be good? And,
mm-hmm.
And
right.
I don't know what's gonna happen.
Because that, going back to that Dahmer TV show, that was one of the things that was kind of interesting, because the TV show, in a way, kind of shows the failings of the police force. And then one of the things that a lot of people may or may not remember, but back when Dahmer was caught, he lived in a poor black neighborhood.
Yeah.
Because one of his preferences was gay black men. And and also, since it was such a poor neighborhood, the cops didn't want to be there. So it was easy for the cops to ignore the screaming neighbor and easy for the cops to ignore everything. But after Dahmer was caught and they found, body parts of at least 18 to 36 different people, there was a famous guy who came in to represent the black community that was affected by all this, by the name of Reverend Jesse Jackson. And he talked about, he turned it into a race issue, basically saying that, the police obviously don't care about this neighborhood because it's black people that live here, and the white devil came in and started killing off all the black people. And it's like, you, at that time, you want to point your finger at Jesse and just say no, but he had a point.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that's the problem. Is like I was talking to my neighbor. She believes in critical race theory because critical race theory is grounded in science. The problem is are there difference in cultures inherent in races? Well,
of course
there are. So
right.
It's grounded in science. It's just
right.
How Tim keeps talking about it's a critical applied race theory.
Right.
And then the annexing the whatever of the Communist Party of critical
right.
race theory. It's like when you add that component on top of it, then you add in the oppressed versus the oppressor.
Right. The Marxist
philosophy on top of that. And that's the problem, because that's what we're getting fed. So
right. And then, like I said before, they lump everything together, so it's not just LGBTQIA+. They throw in, black people and everything all in together as this intersectional group.
Marginalized group. Yeah.
And then,
oppressed versus oppressed.
and that way it's easier to point at things that are,
Well, it's easier to say, oh, you're good, you're bad.
Mm-hmm.
But I was going to say something about Tim's show. He's got Rakowski back on there, and there's just times it just...
Luke?
Yeah, it just drives me, it's about...
But you don't...
How everything...
You find Luke more annoying than Ian?
Oh, yeah.
I'm surprised. I thought you hated Ian.
No, Ian has come a long
way. Yeah, I like him.
But he still says stuff from a naive point of view, right?
Right.
From
he's young.
He just wants everybody to get along. He's not as young as he's 40, I think. He's not as young as, because he makes references of stuff that he's not as young as you think.
Mm-hmm.
But Rakowski, he gets on his rhetoric and he just says these things, and I remember like Alex Jones, because he's his pupil, whether he wants to believe it or not, and he would say the same type of stuff about they use, the powers that be use concepts like fire and ice to control, because fire and ice is a story that Satanists use in their. So he would say that Game of Thrones with fire and ice was designed by evil people as a Bible of sorts to, blah, blah, blah type of, right.
That's funny.
Well, if you listen to Rakowski, he'll say the same type of thing.
I hope he doesn't read our book and Shattered Time and say the same thing.
Well, they will because they don't, because when you hear him say stuff about like Vietnam War, well, Vietnam was about making money and blah, 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 blah. It's like, no. Somebody wrote a story.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else looked at that and said, hey, I can manipulate that story and then profit off of it in a certain way. Same thing with like the Korean War, same thing with like Vietnam, with these type of things. They weren't always created for the profit or for the malfeasance to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It just opportunists come along around the sides and you know, because like he's, well, should have never been in Korea, blah 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 blah. Well, ask Tim's.
I don't know if that's true or not, because I
asked Tim's family
right.
about whether that they're happy that Americans came and fought in Korea.
Right.
He said it. He said it on his show.
But I would disagree. I mean, I don't think we should have been in Nam, but I think South Korea was begging.
We shouldn't have been in
for
Nam.
us to be.
We shouldn't have been in Nam, but we are now been sitting here for 2 hours complaining about communist expansion and the ruin of our country. And the whole idea about Nam was, well, what we told ourselves to go.
Right. The justification.
The justification.
was to stop the communist spread.
And what are we worried about right now?
Right.
What are we fighting against?
But the
right
thing
now?
is, you know, I think one of the things that people need to realize is we cannot stomp out socialism and communism in a war.
Well, but
because
we can't.
Socialism, communism, and capitalism are all thoughts.
They turned it that way. Think about what happened with Vietnam. Think about the radicalization of what happened in Vietnam. In fact, it even happened in America with the way we fought wars. We all of a sudden we learned a lot from Vietnam about the objects of letting our military become viewed as the evil entity. You know, now everybody's a hero that served, you know, blah blah. Well, that used to be in the 2000s. Everybody was a hero. My daddy was a cook. Oh, he was a hero. My daddy was. He was a hero. You know, they had all these shows about building them houses because they were heroes, right? Everybody's a freaking hero. No, Sergeant York was a fucking hero.
Right.
You know, there have been heroes throughout history, but not everybody that fought in the wars were heroes. But if I was wanting to take over the world with communism, I looked at that and said, oh, so the outright going and trying to kill people and forcing them to be communists, everybody around the world said, oh, that's a horrible thing. We have to go stop them. Instead, they pulled back and went, well, maybe we can just get them to do it themselves. Oh, here we are, 30 years later, 50 years, 40 years later.
Right.
And we're done it to ourselves. We're doing it to ourselves.
Yeah.
You know,
But I mean, I don't know how you would ever, because I mean, you know, communism, socialism, and you know, capitalism, all the, you know, like I was saying, it's not. I said the word thought, but it's more of a philosophy, and I don't know how you ever stop somebody from, you know, because like Tim says, and I kind of agree with this, communism can work on a small scale. Like 3 or 4 houses in a neighborhood that pull together and pull their resources together and share everything and run as a commune.
I know that place up in Oregon did very well.
Right. But you know, to try and do that on a, you know, a countrywide or global scale, it takes away freedom. That's the way communism works, is you know.
Well, it just has to be bought in, and you're not going to get bought in by sociopaths, whether it's sociopaths that want to do evil or sociopaths that want to do good. Because there are those people too, right? There's people that take their wanting to be good to the extreme. That might be the best villain. Is villains like Thanos. He had a righteous ulterior motive.
Well, that's one of the reasons that I liked Watchmen so much.
Yeah.
I mean, the movie sucked, but the original story, the graphic novels, was a series of comic books that they made into a graphic novel. But the original graphic novel, I mean, the story was great because, yeah, those guys were convinced, and even the big, mighty, powerful blue guy, he bought into it too. You know, and my favorite character was disintegrated by the, you know, because I was, you know, because when anybody reads a story or watches a movie or whatever, they usually identify with one of the characters in there. And I identified with Rorschach. I mean, yes, he was kind of a psycho. He enjoyed killing bad guys, but he was not a type of person that thought the ends justified the means.
Right.
And that's what that entire book is about, is at the very end, the bad guy and what the hell's his name? The blue guy, Captain, I don't remember. Anyway, he decided that it was the best thing to do was to kill this large group of people so the rest of the group of people could live in peace for years and years.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I wonder, because MacArthur said we shouldn't have stopped.
No.
The 48th parallel should have.
He wanted to go, but he wanted to go into China. Yeah.
So most of what we know about the atrocities that China has done, or even Russia has done, is we speculate, right? How many did they kill? We speculate it's anywhere between 30 to 70 million.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even upwards to 100 million. We speculate because we just don't know.
There's still slaughtering people in Burma.
But what would have happened if we had gone into China and been able to free the Chinese people? Would it have been like when we went into Germany and saw the concentration camps and we knew for a fact what was happening? And we could then point and say that when that starts to raise its ugly head, we know what the outcome is.
Mm-hmm.
But by not going into China and finishing it, then we don't know. We can only speculate of the horrors of communism.
Mm-hmm.
But if we would have gone in, maybe we could have had those first-hand accounts. We could have seen the mass graves. We could have seen the conditions that they were able to mask over or bring themselves out of, to the point where now when we fight against it, what are we fighting against? Have you seen Beijing? It looks pretty. It's beautiful. Have you seen we're asking them for help for space programs. We're asking them for help for this or that, right? It's like now you can't criticize because you can look at it and go, look, it's successful.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's happy there.
Right.
All these things.
But right over here in Burma, people are dying by the billions.
Yeah. And glass over the what was it? 2016 Olympics. When we were in Beijing?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. With the people on the street that had pictures of loved ones saying, my son went to prison and now they won't tell me where he's at. He's completely disparate. I can't go visit him.
Right.
He's just gone. Right.
And most likely he is gone.
Right. And, because it's you get to the point where if you can't feed rural people, you can't feed law-abiding citizens, and you definitely would kill off criminals to be able to feed the others. But
so you have a surplus.
But all of that though is conjecture. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so, it's just you go back and you just look at things and Hollywood's vilification of the Warren Commission and things like that. Did we take it far enough? Apparently we didn't. Look what Hollywood has done. It's fascinating that you have all these movies about Hitler and the horrors that he committed, but nobody will make a movie about Stalin or but Stalin or Mao, and about the millions that they've killed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why won't they make those movies? Why aren't they villains?
Well, the thing is what I don't know. During this entire conversation, what keeps coming up in my mind is, writing the book that I'm writing and everything. Trying to show the thought patterns of a person where they justify their actions to do an immoral act. I sometimes wonder, because once again, history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. But at the same time, it seems like all these countries, communist, socialist, whatever, they get so big and they start killing off large swaths of their population. Is that just the nature of man? Does every person that gets into a leadership position in a socialist or communist dictatorship, do they automatically go to, we have too many people, we don't have enough resources, we have to cull the herd?
Probably, because I wonder if it's like when I first worked at Frito-Lay in California, there was a company, Eagle brand potato chips. Eagle.
I remember them.
They were owned by Budweiser.
Yep.
And
good chips. I like them.
The amount of perks that you got as an employee, they brought in pizza once a week, and they bring in like round table pizza.
Good stuff.
That's expensive pizza. It's not this round table pizza. We got fed that at least once a month. We got all kinds of just food perks like that they bring in, blah blah blah. Well, they finally put Eagle brand out of business, and they thought, then their sales went up, but stagnated because they took over their share.
Right.
But then people only eat so many potato chips. So now all of a sudden, they still had these crazy profit margins that they were trying, 15% return to their investors. Well, they had to get that 15%, and they started looking inward for that 15%. They started looking inward, and so those meals got cut back to maybe once every couple months.
Got to cut costs.
And instead of Round Table, it went to Pizza Hut.
Little Caesars.
Well, never got the Little Caesars, but Pizza Hut, like all that type of stuff just slowly started going away. So most countries, they have their population, and when they needed excess or whatever, they'd go conquer another country, absorb some of those people, and of course they had some debt due to the war, but that wasn't a culling, that was just
right.
But they would absorb those people in, they'd take those resources, and then continue to build the country. But when you're talking about a dictatorship like that, that takes over the country, not in an expansive way, well, all of a sudden, that stuff has to come from within.
Yep, all the resources.
And then it becomes like the Frito-Lay. You start cutting back things. So you cut back on the quality of stuff. Then once stuff like that no longer, then you start cutting the need for it.
Right.
You cut that with people. But a lot of that also just comes just because there's people that be like going, hey, we remember when it was like this. We want it like that again. You can't have it like that. Well, just let me start my own business. I know this guy, he grows this over here, he grows that. I can get these guys to get together, and we can make it, and we can sell it to everybody pretty cheaply. No.
Not in a communist type country.
No, blah, blah, blah. And so they just silence you.
Yeah.
And
so
it's almost amazing because it's almost like cutting off the hand that feeds you. It's like it's like you're willing to chop a body part off. As an object lesson. I don't know what it is.
No, it's like I said. I sometimes think. I mean, one of the things that dumbfounds me is we've come to this conclusion that in a socialist and communist country, that seems to be the way things work. Is eventually you have to cull the herd to maximize your resources. But what I don't understand is why the rest of the planet hasn't come to that same conclusion. It's like, everybody that, touts the ideas of communism and socialism, they've seen it play out in history over and over and over again, that is what communist countries and socialist countries eventually do, is they slaughter half their citizens so they can maintain the status quo. And it's like
one or two things pop into my head. One is crap. Well, one of them is you dehumanize half of it to where you want to get rid of them because they're no longer humans.
Right.
So you justify it that way. And the other half is that they're just so arrogant to think that they're different.
Well, and that they know what's best.
Well, that's fascinating. Is they think that they know best, that they're smarter. But then you watch these videos. I've been watching these videos of them going out on the street, especially during the last two campaigns, and they were showing like they would take a Democrat supporter and take them over to, like at the Trump-Biden election, they took a Biden voter from his side of the protests, whatever, or things. Like when Trump would have a rally, they'd be out there protesting. They would go find some guy that was willing to actually talk, and they said, "Hey, you want to go meet some people and see how horrible? Let's see how horrible it is." And they go over and they're, "Hey, how you doing? Huh? Oh yeah, oh that's interesting. Oh yeah, hey, come on in, blah blah blah." And then they're like, "What is it? What's going on over here?" And then they go back and they show him going back and talking with his own people. All those people mind me of every stereotypical movie of what you would think of some dumb redneck from the South who wants to string up somebody.
Right.
Is like in a movie. Every one of them, they look unintelligent. I mean, and I'm not trying to be mean, but I mean, they look unintelligent. They look just
right.
Don't get you.
Well, yeah. I mean, it makes you.
How is it becoming?
They actually sound like like you were saying, like people from the South and back in the day, where they're like, "You went over there and talked to them black people? Oh my God!
Exactly.
Get away from me!"
But in those movies, they always had this ignorance about their face. They had this look of uneducated, because that's what we always said. It was because you weren't educated enough to understand that they're a human, or that they're and all of a sudden I'm looking at these people in this different light, like, oh, that's how you get at people who will look across the street and go, yeah, all of them need to die.
Right. Well,
then there's people who are just waiting and itching. They just can't wait to shovel you into the furnaces and hit the button.
Well, then there's and these people are important for any type of movement. There's you say that there's a lot of ignorant people that just are stupid and they don't have they don't have any education at all regarding whatever subject. But then there's the ones that are overly educated and consider themselves scientists, and what they do is they use science to back up their argument. That's one of the things that I loved in the Django Unchained movie, was when Candy is explaining, I think they called it phrenology, which was a study of the skull or whatever, and he was talking about the divots that were in the black man's skull that made them more passive and less likely to run away or whatever, and because he always thought to himself, because he said that guy shaved his dad every day, and he said he always wondered why he just doesn't
slit his throat.
cut him, and so using science, and they were able to explain to a young Candy why a black person is not a person, it's a thing.
Well, that we know that. So, like, Thomas Sowell has this book about things they didn't tell you about slavery and growing up, and how slavery was never race-based. It was never like, hey, let's go get that race over there to come over here and be our slaves.
Right.
Racism grew later out of the justification and keeping of the slave trade when it was dying around
the world,
except for in the Middle East. So,
yep.
Once it started to die, they needed a justification for it, and that's when books like that stuff came out. They tried to do studies about that. I know there was they did a criminal justice study. They thought, based upon your skull size, was determined on what kind of criminal you were, what kind of crimes you performed.
Right.
So.
And they also, according to that, I swear it was called phrenology. I think
it is phrenology. Yeah.
But they could, because of the shape and stuff of a skull, they could determine whether you were a psycho.
Yeah.
Or whether you were, a sociopath, or
that was all just based upon
skull size.
These are the people. They went to prisons. What were you in here for? Then they measured their skulls and blah blah, and then so they found correlations.
Right.
That they think, but those correlations are probably like what Peterson says with correlations. Men or women are most likely alike around the 60 percentile. But in the extremes,
right,
they are more farther apart.
Yep.
But most people are. That's probably like most people are politically are in the 60 percentile. They probably agree with 60% of the same things, maybe even 70%. But once you start getting out on the fringes of politics, and that's when all of a sudden these go way over here, these go way over there, right?
Well, one of my favorite. I guess you can't really call it a story because it was a single panel cartoon, but I have one of my heroes in life. It's Gary Larson. You know who Gary Larson is, but for everybody watching, Gary Larson is the guy who created the Far Side. And one of my favorite Far Side single panel cartoons is there's this caveman standing on top of this mountain of a cliff, about to jump off, and he has this big cone-shaped beak thing on his head that's strapped to his head, and he's about to jump off. And in the background, you see these pterodactyls flying around with that same beak-shaped cone on the front of them, And a friend of his standing next to him goes, "Hey, Carl, I don't know if it's the beak that makes them fly."
That's hilarious. I don't remember that one, but that's hilarious. Yeah.
Because it's like, that's the observations that some people make. They think they're making these scientific observations. Oh, well, that thing's flying, and he has a beak thing, and all these other things that fly have a beak thing, so it must be the beak thing that makes them fly. Not those wing things.
Not the wing. With a hollow bone.
Right.
Yeah, none of that stuff, yeah.
So, yeah.
Gosh.
So, yes.
Larson, that's some good stuff.
He was great. He was a scientist, too.
The cowboy's got a scorpion on his nose. And the scorpion says, "Hey, the other scorpion sent me up here to ask you if you'd stop moving around so much." The guy's got his eye. That and the two bears, with the crosshairs on one of them. He's like,
right.
Or is it a deer? Maybe deer.
No, there was a deer with a birthmark on his chest.
Yeah,
that's a bummer of a birthmark, Hal. Yeah.
Do we have comic strips like that anymore?
No, Dilbert's about the only one that comes close. It's not a single panel, but it's usually just 3 panels. Dilbert gets the message across pretty good. But yeah, Gary Larson could do it in one panel. I mean, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean,
it's amazing how we always talk about the same stuff.
We can talk about. Well, I mean, it's all story related, but I mean, it's also related to real life because the stories in real life relate.
Well, you gotta talk about this stuff. You're going nuts.
Well, yeah, and
it's like what I was talking about. It's like
the sad thing
I
is
have to stop watching stuff because it's just driving me nuts.
Right.
All you do is worry constantly all day. You can't get nothing done.
Right.
When all you do is worry about this, worry about that, you're just paralyzed. It just freezes you.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, yeah. That's one of the things that I always kind of wonder about also is if a war breaks out, let's say a civil war breaks out, I have to say that because Tim Pool can't be the only one that talks about it. So let's say a civil war does break out in America. How long would it take before the average person knows it even has happened? I'm saying that if I didn't listen to anything and I didn't watch any news, because I don't watch any news, I do read. But, if I just went along about my daily routine, went to work, went home, went to work, went home, I bet you it would be a week before I knew that anything actually happened, unless there was gunfire that broke out in my neighborhood.
I don't know about that. I think we'd have live footage going.
Yeah, I know, but once again, I don't watch TV.
No, but you watch enough.
Yeah, I know.
Stuff.
The thing is, I would know about it almost immediately because podcasts would tell me first. But still, I mean,
I think we would know about it pretty much. The difference is whether or not I've likened it to maybe like what Ireland was like in the 70s, 80s, with
every once in a while something would blow up.
Yeah, it's just more like this side hits that side hits this side,
mm-hmm.
and you're mostly hitting factional.
Right.
Whether or not there's going to be an Antietam where there's a whole group lined up on one side, a whole group lined up on the other side with actual weapons pointed at each other.
Because,
I don't know about that.
I remember that, they remade it, but, I like the original one best, Wolverines, what the hell was that movie called? Where they attacked Red Dawn. Because, if there was a civil war and you were in the middle of the actual combat zone, which they were pretty close to the line, where the actual fighting was happening, you would, I guess you would have, some soldiers walking around the town, but I bet you most people would try to go about their daily life the way it was before the occupation.
What I was just thinking about was how the way it would start is you would have like a George Floyd type of event.
Mm-hmm.
Some type of event where something like that happens, but instead of that it'd be happening in real time, but it'd be an elongated thing, and people would show up to protest. People would show up to counter-protest or to protect the other entity.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying the bad people that hurt Floyd. I'm just saying an event like that.
Right.
They show up. Neither goes away.
Mm-hmm.
It escalates until there's a skirmish between them.
Mm-hmm.
but they stay. You know, maybe it comes night or whether so they fall back a little bit, regroup. Other people bring them some supplies to refresh. They bring supplies to refresh. Nobody goes anywhere, and they occupy this part of town, and then fighting keeps happening there as people come in, fresh group, fresh. The rest of the town and the rest of the city all functions
same as it did.
Same as it could do. But yeah, for the most part. And just over there, there's fighting going on between the two factions of two, you know, and then it because of something like that happens, then in other towns there's a argument, and that flashes, and then that creates another one, and then another one, and then before you know it, now they're linking together support,
because there's
and
just
then all of a sudden you have a full scale.
There's just stuff that Americans are not going to ever agree on.
Well, no, and we're not supposed to agree on everything. The idea, though, is that we're not supposed to get so far away from our founding ideals.
Yep.
And that's what we've got a problem with right now. And we let ourselves do that. Rakowski, this is a problem I have with Luke. You can't shit on everything America's done for the last 60, 50, or 100 years, but then say we're supposed to support and fight the founding ideas of it, because most of the stuff that we did that you're saying is bad, we did initially because of our founding ideas, but maybe got usurped and went cockeyed along the way. They couldn't have gotten us to go do things without having that moral foundation that was built in this country from the beginning in the first place, right? Couldn't have gone to Iraq without that. We couldn't have gone to Vietnam without that. We couldn't have gone to Korea without that.
Yeah.
So, what, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater? You know, it's kind of like what Rogan keeps talking about. Well, the world's different now. We need to rewrite everything. Ian was saying that same stuff. We got to rewrite it. Well, then, no, you don't rewrite it.
Right.
You just cut out all the...
Yeah, it's like a sculpture. You don't add clay. You start chipping away.
You know what it is? It's the whales or the sharks that have all the sucker fish attached to them. All the parasites that are bleeding off of them. You gotta go and cut all that stuff off. And those are all the laws that we've attached. All this. There's so many of this stuff. The amount of laws that they write every year. A lot of that just needs to go back and cleave off this. That's what Trump was doing when
tried.
Well, yeah, when he said, okay, we're not doing this no more. Well, a lot of that was because he was cutting away big chunks of just suckerfish that are sucking off of the country and dragging it down. And
but it didn't take Biden long to do the exact opposite.
Yeah, the attach the suckers right back.
I mean, he did it the first day.
You know, I was talking to somebody and they're like, oh, gas prices would have gone up under Trump anyways.
Nope.
It's like, no, not when you realize that the reason why gas prices went up is because Biden put us back into the Paris Climate Accords.
Oh, he also shut off the Keystone Pipeline and did all this other stuff, and
it's
all based on speculation, and the speculators go, oh shit, we don't have a supply anymore, and then boom.
No. But all of that is because the Paris Climate Accord says we cannot drill more, we cannot build the pipelines, we can't do those things for the environment.
Yep.
that's the reason why those things were all shut off and turned and turned away. We can't drill more. Why? Because of that. We can't do different. Can't go with the natural gas because we can't drill for that stuff. But all that comes from that. All we'd have to do is say, no, we're not going to do that, and we could open all that back up again. But so yeah, it was Biden.
Yes.
It was directly back to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just.
I've
Like I said, you just think about it so much, and I remember a little tiny 2-bedroom apartment, just trying to hope that the economy doesn't go ass upwards, because we're looking at the bottom of the barrel already, thinking, it can't get much worse.
What really sucks is I've reached an age where the other. I should say not really the other day, because it was, a few months ago. But, my ex-wife accidentally backed into my car and hurt it. And, it's not that big of a deal in the fact that we both had insurance, and her insurance covered everything, and I was able to get a rental car paid for through her insurance and all that kind of stuff. But my immediate reaction when it happened was, I was super upset, and it took me a while to realize what I was actually upset about. Is it used to be when I was married, I had a partner who could help me through difficult times, and my partner and myself, I also had the resources of my parents, could help if needed, and her parents could help if needed, and together we had this kind of a community of people that could help us and get us through tough times. Well, when that accident happened, it kind of reaffirmed that I had nobody that I could depend on. My father's dead. My mother is, she lives in, she lives in Monticello, but she lives most of the time with my sister in Nevada. And I hardly ever see her, and I couldn't ask her for anything anyway. And as far as, all of the people that I lost when I got divorced, and so, it just kind of reinforced everything. And so, when the economy turns bad and you're truly all alone and the only person you have to depend on is yourself, it really sucks ass.
They say, so I was over visiting my brother. I went to church with him, and the guy who gave his talk was about emergency preparedness.
Well, yeah. Well, it's funny is because, since I've been alone, after divorce and stuff, one of the things I carry in my car that I never used to ever think about, because, when your battery goes dead, you just call your friend or your relative and they come and jump your car. Well, I carry around a portable jump pack now. I carry around everything that most people, take for granted.
Well, the interesting one that he brought up in that whole list of things, about having extra food, things, blah blah blah.
Right.
Maybe even enough money for stuff. He's like, well, what happens if something happens and your home is no longer inhabitable? Do you have somewhere to go?
Right.
He's like, you need to get together and be like, we're going to the Johnsons or whatever, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, there's somebody that you know of, that you have, that they know that you're coming. You know that you have a place to go, that in an event of something that happens, and I was like, we keep kicking around the idea of moving
Right.
to Vegas.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to go to that town.
I wouldn't want to go. I don't want to go there either. But we have family there.
Right. So do I.
I mean,
I still wouldn't want to go.
we
But yeah.
we just don't have. I've talked with Laura. It's like if we ever had the opportunity to go on a vacation, like just the two of us, we have no one to leave our kid with.
No.
He doesn't know anybody
Right.
good enough to, or we don't know anybody, or there's nobody like family that just
Right.
are willing to take your kid for a week for you. You know, there's no aunts or uncles.
Right.
Definitely don't have grandmas and grandpas. You know, because they're all gone. Poor kid.
Yep.
He will never.
Meet
He
grandma.
will never remember a grandpa or grandma.
Yeah.
He'll just have pictures of a grandpa.
Yeah.
Of being with a grandpa.
Yeah. I have pictures of Aiden with Dad, but Aiden was a baby and he probably doesn't remember Grandpa very well at all.
He had to be around 6, wasn't he? 6 or 7 when he passed.
Yeah.
He'll remember that because I remember my grandpa vaguely. My two grandpas. One went when I was 5 or 6, and the other one when I was 8. So I vaguely remember them.
Hmm.
My one grandma, she was gone before I was born, and the other one was not until I was like 20s or maybe high school. I can't remember. I'm bad with stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I understand growing up without grandparents, but I had at least a grandma for most of my growing up.
Right.
That I got to spend time with, but she was kind of a hands-off grandma. In her mind, kids were to be seen, not heard, type thing, you know.
Yeah.
You didn't touch things at grandma's house. You really didn't run around and scream and yell at grandma's house.
My two grandmothers, you know, the one on the Rasmussen side and the one on the Dalton side, they were completely different than each other, you know. Grandma Rasmussen, she was pretty proper, you know, good Christian background, you know, LDS, etc., and liked to cook and all that kind of stuff. And Grandma Dalton, she had, you know, the same type of background, you know, good LDS Christian background, but she just had too much sarcasm and humor in her to slow her down. And she, you know, married a rancher, and you know that kind of lifestyle is pretty rough. And so, you know, she was a cowboy poet, and you know, she could have easily been a stand-up comedian. She was the humor of the house. That was she was great.
Yeah, my grandma was very prim and proper. I don't think she ever ate a warm meal at family gatherings.
Oh, like a Christmas Story. Mom never actually ate any warm food.
Yeah, kind of like that, because like, you know, she always had to make sure everybody was served first.
Right.
And then, since there were so many of us, as dishes depleted, she would be the one to get up and refill them and put them back, you know. And so she was always just that type of. My mom would have been the same way if she hadn't had arthritis.
Mm-hmm.
I would have had a completely different childhood growing up. I wouldn't have been as I would have been a lot more taken care of, that's for sure. Even then, I was pretty spoiled.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny that it's not a regret or anything, but I often wonder what it would have been like to, I meet people and they grow up in one part of the world and never leave. You meet these people and they've lived in Utah or one spot in Utah their entire life, and I always wonder, what it would be like to have these lifelong friends. Because I moved around so much and had so many different friends every time I moved that, hell, I don't know if I remember 3% of their names, of all those people that I met.
My problem is just caring enough to remember.
Well, yeah, I think it would.
I'm bad that way. I have a very disassociative behavior, I think, at times. So, like, if I meet somebody, I have to repeat their name over and over and over and over and over again in my mind to try to remember it. And even then, I'm probably going to forget it because I don't.
Well, that's just I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast, but in college, at one point, I was in a psychology class, and the teacher announced one day at the end of class, tomorrow we're going to map the human brain. And I thought, are they going to scan my brain? Or are they, what the hell does that mean? And it was kind of funny because this is actually kind of what spawned this whole idea of writing this book, The Path, the way people think or the way thoughts go through the human brain. Because what this mapping exercise is it was basically this thing on a piece of paper that says, okay, when information goes in, what do you do with that information? And it could be an information about anything. It could be a math problem, 2 + 2 equals, and that information goes in, and what does your brain do to get to that point? And she said, as part of the thing, you have to be as honest as you can with yourself, to get the most out of this. And so I took it to heart, and unfortunately, when somebody gives me information, the first thing that I do with it is I ask myself, is this information important enough to remember? And if it's not, then it's completely discarded. And so when somebody tells me their name and I'm meeting them for the first time, unfortunately, my mind will I'll ask myself, am I ever going to meet this person again? And I'll go, nope. And so I'll go, hey, Charlie, how you doing? And then I'll walk away. And Charlie's forgotten about. He is completely erased from everything that just happened.
Being honest, I wonder if it's more for me, if it's like, it's not so much, hey, I might meet this guy again, but he's probably not going to want to go do anything with hang out with me or he's probably not going to care.
Right.
So
he probably won't remember me either.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
my dad remembers everybody's names.
Right.
He remembers phone numbers.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah, a lot of the way people think, a lot of the times it's different. It's different for some people. Some people, that information comes in, and they do something different than what I do. Yeah.
Crazy.
But I think that those type of exercises, which, like I said, that book that I'm writing, The Path, it's basically the same thing. It's I'm just showing how information travels through the brain to where, because I wanted to answer that question of why would somebody do something against their moral code? Because it just doesn't make any sense. But when you analyze it from your own point of view and from, that's the way I think that information travels through their brain. They get to that point where they justify their action and then they take that action. But they have to, for me, I believe that they always have to get to that justify stage before they get to the action stage.
Sounds like you need to read that Dostoevsky book that Peterson keeps bringing up. That
what did somebody beat me?
Crime and Punishment. Is it Crime and Punishment? No, was it? It's about the gulags, about what people justify doing in the gulags.
Oh, geez. Yeah, that would be a good book to read.
Yeah, he cites it a lot.
Well, I mean, that one experiment that I can't remember the experimenter.
Stanford.
The one where the shock.
Oh,
do you
shock one. Yeah,
do you remember that one?
Then the Stanford one too, where they did the prison, the Stanford prison. Where they took the students and half of them were guards and half of them were inmates.
Oh, okay.
And they locked them in and what eventually the guards were willing to do to the inmates was just horrifying. And it happened within like a drastic amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a fascinating.
Right, but the shock experiment was kind of interesting. It's kind of also showing what a person will do as long as there's a person of authority there. Because once again, I think that the justification comes in where you have to push this button and it's going to hurt somebody, so that's against your own moral code, and so you have to justify in your mind. Well, their justification for that mostly was, okay, this person of authority is telling me this is okay.
Right. And then add into that being the moral authority.
Right.
So then if you hold yourself as the moral authority, then no matter what comes into your brain,
it's all justified.
It's all justified.
Because that's what cult leaders are.
Yeah, that's the problem with the cult leader can happen, is that they can, it's like you think of a horrible thing, but then you say, well, no, but I'm the chosen one.
Mm-hmm.
So then what I thought can't be wrong.
Right.
It can't be like in the Book of Mormon. There's a line in there that Nephi writes. He says, "Oh, the wretched man that I am." And you're like, wait, you're the prophet. you're the religious leader. Wait. He recognizes that he has struggles and problems in his life that he is fighting against day in and day out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if he recognizes that, then I need to recognize that my little things, But if he were to sit and think that he was the ultimate moral authority,
right,
and that when a bad thought enters in his mind, would think, well, only evil thoughts react into evil people, and if I'm a good person, then those must be good thoughts, so then I can act on that. So that's the problem with this moral left that is rising in America, when they just look at their moral objective and then are able to act on evils to the other side because they think they're in the moral perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said this is a male chauvinist, type stuff, but that whole philosophy that marriage people talk about, happy wife, happy life, or the whole thing of you should have just done it my way the first time because it was, it's obviously the right way.
Right.
It's like if that's the marriage you're in, get out.
Mm-hmm.
Get out now. And heaven forbid, I've said this before, I said, heaven forbid we turn the world from a patriarchy to a matriarchy, because you give that ideology moral superiority on top of that, holy crap, is that a hell? That's a hell beyond hell.
Well, that's one of the problems that we're having right now.
That's exactly the problem we're having where we're going down. That's like, gosh, happy life, happy wife. So if I had the moral authority, so any way that I want to treat you comes from the moral perspective.
Moral high ground, yeah.
Moral high ground. Well, then, here, eat shit and be happy about it. You know? And if you don't, then you're just a misogynistic prick. You know, blah, 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 blah. It's like, wow, gosh. Imagine a worse hell than that. I don't know if there's much of one.
Right.
And so for women who know and understand other women and understand that the worst thing that they want is being ruled by women, that's a good woman to have around.
Right. Yep. So, wow, how much time have we killed?
We have wasted 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 26 minutes.
So,
and a half.
We really need to, because one of the things that I was going to start doing, you know, I'm reading the Shattered Time story on Spotify. Unfortunately, I've only gone through like 5 chapters. I'm doing that both as an editing tool and also, you know, to get the story out there. But I've been thinking, even before we get the art done on those short stories that I'm writing for A Town Called Liberty, I'm going to start doing the same thing on Spotify. Because what I would like to do is, the reason that I want to do these things, my justification, is I want to get them out there so when we approach somebody like a Tim Pool or a Daily Wire type of people, I can send them to somewhere just to get a sample, you know, because I truly think that A Town Called Liberty would be right up their alley, you know, as far as, you know, short moral tales.
I do too. At times, I think I wonder if they need to be a little bit more. And this is just conjecture. A little bit more Twilight-y zone-y, kind of more.
Yeah.
Well, just more fantastical.
Right.
Not so much just grounded. Because they are very grounded stories, but. So sometimes I wonder if there needs to be a little more of a sci-fi fantasy,
supernatural, yeah.
Just more of a Twilight Zone, amazing stories.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Type of zing to it, but other than that,
no. I mean, because overall, you know, everybody knows what the message is supposed to be.
Well, I know, yeah, and that's the problem. Sometimes is that then it just becomes.
It's a grim fairy tale. That's it.
Right, but grim fairy tales are fantastical.
Sometimes.
If you took out the fantastical out of some of that, then it just becomes a story that's just like, oh, yeah, well, yeah, of course.
Well, yes.
You know, where I'm just saying.
Yes, because, you know.
It's the entertainment value of
Goldilocks, you know, goes into a house owned by 3 bears. Bears don't own houses.
Right.
Yes, I understand what you're saying, but, you know, at the same time, I kind of like the whole Demolition Man aspect to it, that it's, you know, a future.
Well, but even that's got whimsy to it.
Right.
More whimsy than what I'm saying is what's in ours.
We don't have whimsy.
And so that's the entertainment value that I think that sometimes they're looking for.
Well, that's one of the things that I want to do is, you know, it's not necessarily that I want to stick with just my writing style for Liberty. What I would love to do is, write a few on the subjects that I've listed. Write a few stories, and then if we get picked up or have somebody that's supporting us, be it Tim or somebody else. I would love to have somebody else write some stories and have them illustrated and then
Well, yeah,
done.
I've said that I'd probably be off that story pretty quickly once it goes going, just because I'd want to transition over to the other stories. They're so
Right.
huge. I mean,
Right. But I mean, I think once that world or universe has been established.
The right one.
Well, I don't know if Prager would be really into that, but I mean, I know that there was a lot of the people at Timcast, and also I think Glenn Beck would be fantastic at writing little short stories like that.
Glenn would be great. I don't see why Dennis. You just got to get him the right one.
Mm-hmm.
If his is all about communist, his whole, we got his doctorate or whatever in communist studies, I think, or something like
Right.
that.
Well, one of the things I think that would be great for Dennis to write about is because one of the things that he talks about on most of his fireside chats is that he thinks that the most important thing in life and what will keep us from going off the edge into oblivion is gratitude. Nobody has gratitude anymore. Nobody's grateful for anything. The world sucks. America sucks because we have this history of oppression and blah 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 blah. And
Well, that's kind of what I'm talking about with Rick, with Kowski.
Mm-hmm.
When you boil everything down to money and greed,
Mm-hmm.
and there was no moral standing for anything that we have ever done,
Right.
then then what's the point of keeping it?
Right.
Then burn it down.
Yeah.
Then it's not good. It's not worth saving.
Right. It's all about and I think he's correct.
Dumbasses sometimes. You get so
Gratitude.
they get like this. It's like some of these movie reviews. I was telling you how bad that Rings of Power has been.
Mm-hmm.
But I go on and listen to some of these guys' reviews, and it's like, did you even watch it? I mean, they're tearing apart every little thing. It's like I watched the last episode. Yeah, it was stupid. It was horrible. But you know what I came out of it saying? That should have been the first episode. If they would have started with that episode,
Right.
they might have actually been able to write something fairly decent.
Mm-hmm.
But they built all up to this thing, and it was like, that didn't land. That didn't land. That was stupid. That was dumb. And didn't you just rewrite all of Tolkien lore by what you just did?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the frickin' Lord of the Rings, the beginning of it, one ring.
Right.
He made 7 rings and gave it to the
Mm-hmm.
men. He gave 9 rings to the dwarves. He gave 3 rings to the elves, but he made one specific one. So what did he put in it that binded all of those rings? And what was the it's magic, right? There's magic in the rings.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's mithril. And not only is it mithril, but the elves built their own rings. He didn't actually forge the rings and then give them to them as gifts to be used for what?
That's funny.
There's Alan Moore talks about the fact that he doesn't want to give his stuff to Hollywood because
Don't blame him.
people just shit on it.
Well, what's his name? Ender's Game. Orson Scott Card didn't want to do this. He said the same thing. He didn't.
Yeah. And Tolkien's family fought for the longest time. But oh my, how do you How do you change something so the fundamental thing of the whole story is like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh,
Right.
and it's just, and the writing is so bad. Not just the story, but the writing. Oh my gosh. You asked why I watched it? It's a train wreck.
Yeah.
It was slowing down to watch the train wreck.
Mm-hmm.
I had to keep watching. Laura asked me the same thing. Why do you keep watching? I realized I had to see the train wreck. I had to see just how bad could it keep getting.
Right.
Galadriel. Everybody who saw her fell in love with her. It was supposed to be because of her beauty. No, it's not because of her beauty. It's because of the cool shit she can do.
Mm-hmm.
She can ride a horse awesome. She can sword fight really good. Because guaranteed, it ain't because she's pretty, but she's a fucking ugly bitch.
Yeah.
She was ugly in that. I mean, she just literally just, it's like, really? And she was 5'2" and Galadriel's 6 foot. It's just gorgeous elven thing.
Right.
Jessica Chastain. No, Kate Blanchett. Kate
Wow.
Blanchett.
Isn't
Just, oh my gosh. And it just makes me cringe. The idea of what some of you do to our shattered time.
Well, yeah. That's why it's important to, first put out the books and stuff, and then, it's almost feels better to do an animated something first, because, that usually stays a little bit more true to the writing, and then, then you sell that kind of stuff to Hollywood and let them crap all over it.
Sell it to Amazon for $20 million, or do you sell it to the Daily Wire for $1 million?
Right. Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Mm-hmm.
Right there. That's a tough one. Because Daily Wire would respect your lore
Right.
more, whereas Hollywood just gonna
No. I mean,
crap all over it.
yeah, I don't know. It's tough, to me, you just have to find certain people in Hollywood that respect things, and I don't care what anybody says in Hollywood that, because too many people dislike him, but I think Mel Gibson has been true to most stories from the very beginning, and he's an excellent director. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah, but the thing is he doesn't really like to do fantasy stuff. He likes to do real life type stuff.
I don't know if anybody give him that much money anymore.
But like Robert Downey Jr. kept telling Marvel over and over again, oh, you got to have Mel direct something, and they would never give in to that.
Oh no.
But Robert and Mel, they're real good friends.
Are they?
Oh yeah, don't you know the story of that? Because you remember Robert Downey Jr. He kind of fell off the wagon or whatever you want to call it, and went to jail for a little while and did all he had alcohol and substance abuse problems, and he was even though he was fantastic, he had done stuff like Chaplin and all that, as an actor, he was great. Hollywood didn't want to touch him, and Mel and him did that movie, American, or what the hell was that called?
Oh,
the airplane one.
American
No.
Spirited?
Anyway, it's a Vietnam show.
Yeah.
I'll think of it here in a bit, but that's where they got to know each other, and
Spirit,
it was no.
I thought that was the name of the plane.
Anyway, so they got to be friends then, And it was Mel that kept getting Robert Downey different jobs, you know. And so he was kind of a mentor and everything. And yeah, Robert would love to pay him back. Because Mel has now fallen out of the good graces of Hollywood because of that one drunken tirade that was recorded without his knowledge.
Yeah.
So, anyway,
Air America.
Air America.
I knew it had America in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, burnoutstudios.com is our website. It has links to this podcast. It has links to both Shattered Time and Town Called Liberty. I don't have any of the stories of Town Called Liberty up yet anywhere.
Anybody want to be an intern?
And
We could just send you some content. You could post it.
I need to get those Liberty stories out there somewhere.
Do you have them written like a story format?
Yeah.
Like novel format?
Yeah, you've already seen the first one.
Have I?
We did podcasts about it.
I guess, yeah. Well, I mean, I have. Yeah, I guess so. I just don't remember being that as descriptive as novel.
Yeah.
More just story based, or more dialogue based.
Mm. Yep.
Okay.
But yeah, and so let's see here, any other places they can find our work? That's about it.
Just here, me on Instagram, but I don't post it there in a long time.
Right.
Jam Spoon on Instagram, 3 O's.
But we have all our links on Burnout Studios.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll hopefully get started on a Town Called Liberty Spotify podcast. And that way I can, read the story there and at least get it out there so the public can see it. And then, the whole idea is to have it not only as a audio podcast, but we want to do a kind of a video of kind of a video storybook, because there's going to be pictures and stuff that Bruce is going to do that goes along with it. And, we've talked about also having, sound effects and stuff, that we add in.
I wonder if it would be interesting to take the transcripts from these
Mm-hmm.
and putting it on there, kind of like a weekly newsletter type thing.
Oh, from our podcast? Yeah, on Burnout Studios. Yeah.
Or just cut some excerpts out of it. And create
Well, that
a
was
weekly newsletter type thing.
That was another thing that we talked about before, and I kind of like to do is do chunks, shorts from the podcast and put those out on YouTube as little. They have the YouTube Shorts thing.
Well, shorts are a minute.
Yeah,
I don't think there's anything that we could. Too much of the
sometimes we have, if when you're listening to it, I listen to all of these. There's important things that are said,
right?
And that would be
I just know about a short,
nice little chunk.
Yeah, but a nice little chunk. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But we'd have to record those, or I don't actually record the podcasts.
Well, I mean, technically, isn't it recorded? I mean, can't you get it?
I don't know. No, I think it's on YouTube stuff. I might be able to. I don't think
You should be able to.
download it.
I think you should be able to download it and edit it.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know if you can.
Okay. But anyway,
All right.
that's our show for today. So visit, like, subscribe, all those other words that people use.
Mostly share.
Yeah. And comment.
Share.
God.
Comment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Say hi.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.